Right now, it feels as though Star Rail is currently undergoing a lot of change, which is naturally leading to a lot of confusion about what decision is best for your account. We have the Elation comps that are starting to come together. We've got Ashvale, who's brought back follow-up. And then there's the upcoming Blade, who's looking to not only revive many older teams, but also become a strong generalist for many currently established teams. But most importantly, the newly announced Starward mode, introducing 3 stages to all endgame modes, is making people question what to pull next. But in the midst of all this change, it's more important than ever to understand your own goals and make decisions that benefit your account. Because of this, there'll be some advice you hear that's perfect for you, and others that'll be completely worthless. Being able to discern between the two, and understanding when to make the next move for your account, will be the focus for today. Before we address the question directly, let's start by looking at things in the opposite direction. When should we continue to invest in our teams? Looking at things this way, I think will emphasize the main message of this video: how the context of your account dictates the correct move. And while I've spoken about context at length in the past, this topic provides a perfect opportunity to further develop the concept and re-establish its importance. Back to the question though. To understand when to continue investing in a team, we must first establish what our goals are. This is very relevant right now, as the addition of Starward mode has caused many people to shift their goals into establishing 3 strong teams that can clear all the endgame modes. But how exactly do you want to clear? Are you trying to get the bare minimum required to receive all the Stellar Jades? Do you want to clear comfortably and leave yourself a little wiggle room for error? Or are you a masochist who won't accept anything lower than a 0 cycle? Knowing where you stand amongst these playstyles will dictate how much of the meta is relevant to you, and will shift the importance of who you pull. For instance, if you're shooting for 0 cycles, pulling key Eidolons will help dramatically in establishing 3 consistently performing teams, as many early Eidolons post version 3 have been designed to significantly increase the strength of a character, which obviously lengthens their shelf life. However, if you're just seeking the bare minimum, your priority would then be towards obtaining key teammates to make the team function, and moving on once they've reached an acceptable level. But it's also important to understand that not all goals are as clear or inflexible as that. Some people do no limited Eidolon runs, others strive to play teams at their lowest possible cost, and a very vocal minority of people only accept a 0 cycle, sometimes in combination with the previously stated restrictions. But on the other end of the spectrum, you'll have people who only play their favorites, others who play teams comprised of only characters with the same gender, and people who barely even engage with endgame. There's a ton of nuance among them, and it's impossible to determine the best decision for every person's goal, which is why I, and many others, try to provide recommendations that yield the best numerical results. But why is this important to understand when investing in older teams? Well, that's because the combination of your goals and your pre-existing characters is pivotal in assessing how to move forward. Funnily enough, the importance of looking back at what you already own is more important now than it's arguably ever been in Star Rail, as we're in a situation where a lot of older teams are coming back into the meta. Because of that, returning players, or those who've invested in some older archetypes, might gain far more by reinvesting in those teams than starting fresh with a newer comp. However, this is often done under very heavy conditions, and will often be decided on the preference of the player. For example, for those who have an E0 Firefly lying around, it could be a very good idea to pick up Dahlia, and maybe Firefly's E2 if you can, as she's currently one of, if not the, best DPS in the game right now, and is one of the least expensive teams to reach the peak of their performance. However, if you don't enjoy Firefly, don't have the pulls to safely secure Dahlia, or are closer to a strong upgrade on another team, it's very likely this isn't your best choice. On the other hand, if you're entirely devoted to playing a DPS like the Herda, Triby's current rerun is a perfect opportunity to grab her E1 if you haven't already, and to consider increasing her personal damage through grabbing her Light Cone or her E2. I say this because the other 2 slots of the Herda's team tend to change often depending on the environment, but Triby is almost always present. So then, once you've gotten things like the Herder's E2, there are a few options available to consistently elevate the Herder's performance, beyond Tribby. So while meta might dictate that picking up Dahlia on account that owns Firefly is the best choice, your goals and preferences could lead you down a different path. And while Tribby's Light Cone or E2 aren't generally recommendable, for someone that only cares about the Herda, it's very reasonable to take this opportunity and vertically invest further into her best support. All of this nuance is important, because Star Rail is in a state where a lot of archetypes are not only revived, but currently thriving. Because of this, a random pull you made a year or two ago could end up being the deciding factor as to whether or not it's worthwhile to continue investing. For Dot fans that got Kafka and Black Swan back in the day, all you need to do is pull High Sealants, and your team is back on top. The same can be said with Dahlia for Firefly fans, and in the very near future, Blade will do the same for Acheron. So then, it's important now, more than ever, for people to understand that Star Rail's meta isn't strictly comprised of the newest teams. And it's very possible that investing in the newest version of your old team could be your best decision. However, it's also important to understand that not every character is treated equally, and it's possible the older DPS that you like didn't get the same treatment. This is why you must view this information through the context of your account. But with all of that established, I think it's time we address the situations when you should move on to another team. For those who tend to horizontally invest, which means they'll pull new teams instead of investing further into older teams, moving on to the newest thing is a bit of a no-brainer. However, for reasons stated before, the design philosophy of the game from version 3 and onward has incentivized vertical investment more and more. This can be seen through the addition of Nova Flares, the revival of older archetypes, and most importantly, the increased strength of early Eidolons. As such, moving on to the newest team has become far harder to recommend, and much of the reason why stems from one simple truth. It's more expensive to start from nothing. I'm sure we're all aware that currently, almost all archetypes have a variant that's near the top of the meta. As such, figuring out which one to pull for starts to be far less of a question of who's stronger, but rather a question of which one you can get faster. This is why there are more scenarios than not where it's better to stick with the teams you've already invested in. But what if you'll be starting from scratch either way? What if you're done investing in an old team for now? Or maybe you'll be waiting a long time for a specific rerun. Situations like these are when accounts tend to move on, and begin investment into the newest archetype. This is where we see the importance of time and luck, as these two concepts often lead accounts down the path of investing in newer teams. Firstly, when I say time, what I'm often referring to is the frequency of relevant reruns, and if they align with the speed you'd want to reach your goals. For example, for someone that's solely focused on getting 3 teams that can 3-star the Knights, but only have 2 strong teams right now, whether they want to clear that patch or are willing to wait a few patches will immediately change what the optimal decision would be. On the other hand, an account that's willing to wait patiently for important reruns can utilize that time in between to save pulls and ensure they acquire the strong early Eidolons. This is often the safer direction to take, as it minimizes the impact the bad luck can have on your pull plans. But in return, you may need to accept a few endgame rotations that don't reach your desired clear speeds. At a baseline, neither decision is inherently right or wrong. What truthfully matters is which one aligns more with your goals. But you may have noticed I spoke about luck, and unfortunately, it has a big role to play in these situations. Now, talking about luck in correlation to meta discussions is a little taboo, since it's a factor that has the power to invalidate everything you say. For instance, no matter how much I say that High Sealants made Dot one of the strongest teams in the game, and is one of the cheapest teams to vertically invest into, if you got unlucky when pulling for her, then what I said is no longer true. In that very same breath, I could say that Model Remembrance is one of the most expensive teams to vertically invest into, as you really want multiple E2s. But if you got lucky, then it could be the cheapest team for you. This disparity makes things hard to evaluate and could easily change the direction your account goes. It's for this very reason that I personally hate pull priorities, as it can't account for things like luck or banner availability. But why does luck impact what teams you invest into? Well, that's because being able to adapt to how luck changes things is pivotal when making the decision of moving on to another team. To explain what I mean, I'll provide an example that many people might relate to right now, and that's whether to invest in Superwolf or Evanescia. Now, many people likely plan to invest into Superwolf, especially considering she's the anniversary character and is one of the strongest DPS right now. However, what if you pulled into her banner and lost your 50-50? What would be the best choice for that account? Well, if you look at things in a strictly meta perspective, it's actually wiser to instead pivot into getting Evanescia, as you can guarantee her at E0, and will likely be able to accumulate enough pulls to acquire her E1, which would make her immediate strength far better than an E0 or E1 Superwolf. However, it's important to note that this only looks at things in a numerical perspective, as Evanescia at E1 is stronger than Superwolf at E1, and this assumes that there are enough pulls available to acquire her E1, which is likely in the case of Evanescia, considering she's second half, but not a guarantee. Either way, you can see that luck has a lot of sway in what's the optimal course of action, so being flexible with where luck takes you, establishing backup plans, and being willing to jump ships when things go poorly can keep you on the right track despite the bad luck. But with all of that being said, you may still be wondering, what should you do? But the truth is that there's nothing I can say in this video that can fully answer this question. There's far too much nuance between every person's account, making an all-inclusive answer impossible to do. I myself still wonder what the best choice is to make on my account, and struggle to determine when I should move on to other teams. And the truth is that it's not a simple question to answer, as there's likely even more nuance that I didn't bring up in this video. But the important part to remember is that only you can make the decision. Others may try to guide you, but the final call lies entirely in your hands. So, look at your own account, and you tell me, should you move on? While I have this chance, I'd like to thank Sutemi for the video idea, as I think it brought a very cool perspective to an issue many people might be having right now. Well, that, and I'll happily take any opportunity I can get to talk more about context. Speaking of that though, I'd like to formally announce that I have a Discord server now. Now this server, much like my content, is focused more on meta, but there's a focus on helping others out and discussing the state of the game. So if you're someone who needs help, or someone who's also knowledgeable about the game and wants to help others, you should join. It'll be linked in the description and probably the pinned comment for those who are interested. Anyways though, bye-bye!